So, hello there, and welcome back to another Night of the Movies podcast. I'm Spy Knight, and in these podcasts, I love talking all things movies and TV, and whatever I want, whenever I want. And in today's podcast, I'm reviewing Shrek 2. Yes, I'm continuing on with my Shrek film reviews with Shrek 2. So, let's get into it, shall we? Shrek 2, in case you hadn't guessed already, is, of course, the sequel to the first Shrek, which released in 2001, and Shrek 2 released in 2004. And this film has many of the same returning voice cast, with the likes of Mike Myers returning to voice Shrek, Cameron Diaz returning to voice Princess Fiona, Eddie Murphy returning to voice Donkey, alongside new additions to the voice cast, such as Antonio Banderas as Puss In Boots. I just forgot off the top of my head right now what the other ones were. No, wait, that's it. John Cleese and Julie Andrews as Fiona's parents, and the villains of this film are Prince Charming, voiced by Rupert Everett, and the fairy godmother, voiced by Jennifer Saunders. And I remember from a young age really enjoying this film. This was the film which got me into the Shrek franchise. I liked the first film, but I never loved the first film when I was a kid. And I remember watching the second film and just being so into it, as a kid. And every chance I got as a kid, I would watch this film. When it was on TV, I would sit down and just watch the whole of it. If it was just beginning, it was halfway through, I would sit down and watch the entirety of Shrek 2 because I enjoyed it so much. And it was a good couple of years ago. I want to say, it might have been during lockdown, it was on TV, and I hadn't seen it in a bit of time, and I watched it, and I was not having a good day, and it made my day like 10 times better. I was watching it, and I had the biggest grin on my face. I remember enjoying Shrek 2 so much. And I hadn't seen the film probably since that time that I watched it in COVID when it was on TV. So because I watched Shrek, the first Shrek, earlier this week, a couple of days ago now, I decided to check out Shrek 2 to see if it still worked for me. And there's been a couple of times where I've been reviewing sequels on this channel over the however many years it's been since I've been doing this channel. I think I've been doing this channel, I think it's 6 years this year. Wow, that feels weird to say. Anyway, there's a couple of times when I've been doing film reviews on TV reviews on this channel, talking about sequels and whatnot, and I've often said that Shrek 2 is one of the best sequels of all time. And sometimes I say that, and sometimes when I say it, I kind of think in my mind, maybe I'm over-exaggerating that. Is it actually one of the best sequels of all time? I do need to go back and revisit it at one point. So when I sat down to watch this film, again for the first time in quite a bit of time the other day, I sat down and I thought, is it actually going to be one of the best sequels of all time? Am I going to prefer it over the first Shrek? Because when I watched the first Shrek for the first time in a good long time the other day, I ended up loving that movie. But I was wondering, am I still going to think this is a superior film to the first film? Do I still think it's one of the best sequels of all time? Or am I going to feel differently after watching it at the age I'm at now? Is it going to still work for me the way it did when I was a kid? Hey, that rhymed. And so, I sat down to watch the film a couple of days ago, excited but also a little worried. I don't know why, I was a little worried that it wouldn't work for me as much as it did before. And after finishing the film a couple of days ago now, I can happily say I love this movie still. I love it. It is a superior film to the first Shrek. And you could tell in my review of the first Shrek how much I loved that movie. And how much I still love that movie even. But on a rewatch of Shrek 2, I couldn't believe how much I was into it all over again. I would probably say that the first Shrek is a funnier film, but I would also say that Shrek 2 is a better film overall, and it's a better film because it carries over those themes and those messages from the first Shrek and explores them in a very satisfying fashion, a way that really worked for me. And I thought the animation was better. You can tell this was a film made a couple of years after the first Shrek. I thought the storytelling was more confident. I loved the addition of these new characters. Like, you've got Fiona's mum and dad. I love how they're voiced by Julie Andrews and John Cleese, who really feel like they're throwing themselves into the voice acting, particularly John Cleese. And I'm not a big fan of John Cleese. I'm like one of the only people in the world who is not really a fan of Fawlty Towers. I don't get it. But at the same time, I love his voice acting as the king of Far, Far Away in this film. I think he's great. And I love Antonio Banderas as Puss in Boots. That is a genius character. I don't know if Puss in Boots is an original character, by the way. I'm not entirely sure on that. I don't remember coming across many fairy tales, but then again, I didn't read loads of fairy tales when I was a kid, and fairy tales weren't really read to me either. I mean, there was a couple which were read to me when I was at a much younger age, but I don't really remember coming across Puss in Boots apart from the Shrek franchise. So, as far as I know, he's an original character, and I love that character so much. Particularly because I remember watching this film from a very young age, and it wasn't that long after I watched this film that I watched the first Zorro at a young age as well. I haven't seen the first Zorro in quite a bit of time. Was it called The Mask of Zorro? I think that's what it's called. And I remember loving Zorro, and then I remember one of my family members telling me, you know, the same person who plays Zorro also voices Puss in Boots in the Shrek franchise. I was like, that can't be true, because they're basically the same character. Then I found out it was true, and I was like, that is brilliant. That is so brilliant. The fact that they got Antonio Banderas, you know, Zorro himself, to voice essentially a cat version. Yeah, it's a cat version of Zorro in this film, and he voiced it like he plays Zorro. Oh, I love Antonio Banderas' voice in Puss in Boots. I love the character Puss in Boots. He's hilariously funny, and I love how he's used in the Shrek franchise post this film. And another thing I really love about this movie is how we have, you know, our main group of characters back. We have Shrek, we have Fiona, and we have Donkey all back in this movie. But like the best sequels ever made, like some of the best sequels ever made, should I say, it splits up those characters. I mean, yes, Shrek and Donkey are still on the adventure together, but Shrek is separated from Fiona. And that's another reason I really liked it so much. That's another reason I love this film so much, even, because it reminded me of the likes of Star Wars Episode 5, The Empire Strikes Back, which is one of my favourite movies of all time, and The Lord of the Rings, The Two Towers, which is another one of my favourite movies of all time. You know, and those two sequels, which are widely considered some of the best sequels of all time, you have that, you're still following your main group of characters, but they're split up from the first film. You know, in Empire Strikes Back, Han and Leia and Chewie are split up from Luke. Luke is on his own adventures, on his own journey in Empire Strikes Back. And in Two Towers, the Fellowship of the Ring from the first Lord of the Rings film, Lord of the Rings and Fellowship of the Ring, are split up, and you get to see the power of the Fellowship of the Ring when they're all separated. You get to see the power of the Fellowship separated, and I love that. And I love in this film how, yes, we built this great dynamic between the main three characters in the first film, and how now we're gonna split that up in the second film. And I think it makes for a more compelling movie. I think it makes for a more engaging movie, because throughout the film, like in Empire Strikes Back and like in The Lord of the Rings, The Two Towers, you want these group of characters to get back together. You want them to reunite, because you know how enjoyable it is to watch them reunite. You know how enjoyable it is to watch them together, should I say. But you also enjoy seeing them go on their own personal journeys after the first film, and you see the effect that the events of the first film had on them. I don't know how well I explain myself there, but hopefully you get the point I'm making. I love when a sequel separates its core characters. You know, in the case of this film, the core three characters, Shrek, Fiona and Donkey, and you get to see them go on their own journeys in this movie, and it creates some turmoil between those characters, which makes for an all the more satisfying conclusion. And another reason I love this movie so much is because of the villains. This is the Shrek film where I think it gets really clever with the villains. I love Lord Farquaad in the first film. No dissing on him whatsoever. I think that's a great villain and brilliantly voiced by John Lithgow in that movie. But in this film, you have Prince Charming and the fairy godmother as the villains. And that choice for the villains in this film is, again, I'm going back to that word, genius, because usually Prince Charming in all these stories is, well, he's Prince Charming. He's the guy who gets the girl, you know, he's Mr. Handsome, and he often ends up with Mrs. Beautiful, you know what I mean? And usually the fairy godmother in these stories, you know, I'm thinking of Cinderella right now. I don't know if the fairy godmother's used in any other story, by the way, but I know she's definitely used in Cinderella. Usually the fairy godmother is this sort of angel-like figure who helps the damsel in distress, if you will, reach her goal, you know what I mean? But in this film, she is that, but she's the villain. And I love that. I love the fact that they have Prince Charming and the fairy godmother, two characters that in any other fairy tale story will be considered the best of the best guys, you know what I mean? The best of the best. And in this film, they're the worst of the worst. I love how Prince Charming comes across as this sort of incel character, actually. Sort of relying on his mummy, that's what Rupert Everett, you know, when he's voicing Prince Charming, that's what he keeps saying whenever he's talking to the fairy godmother, who is his mother in the film. That's what he keeps calling her. You can tell how much he relies on her. He's not a very self-sufficient person, and I love that it goes, yeah, you know, the most handsome of people, and always the most lovable of people as well. I think he's brilliantly voiced by Rupert Everett. I'm a fan of Rupert Everett, and I love how he voices Prince Charming. It's again another piece of genius voice casting. I don't really talk about great voice casting when I'm reviewing an animated movie, but this is genius voice casting. The voice casting of Puss In Boots is genius, and the voice casting of Prince Charming is genius, and the voice casting of Jennifer Saunders as the fairy godmother is also genius. I really wish, and slight spoilers here in case you haven't seen Shrek 2, but if you haven't seen Shrek 2, it's what, 21 years old this year. You've got, you know, you've had your chance to watch it, but spoiler here, they kill off the fairy godmother. And I always wish that they didn't, because I thought her return could have been great. And I mean, never say never. We are talking about a fictional world here, so never say never. And, you know, the fairy godmother could return in Shrek 5, but which is in production. And, you know, it's a possibility, but I very much doubt that's going to happen. And it's a shame, because the fairy godmother was probably my favourite villain, and yeah, probably still is my favourite villain in the Shrek franchise overall. Because when you first meet her, you think, oh, she's going to be this angel-like figure. And then she turns out not to be. And I think she's, again, brilliantly voiced by Jennifer Saunders. And God, I love that character. I love the way she voiced that character. I love the way that character is written. And she's so funny to watch. And it's one of those characters as well that you love to hate. You love watching that character, but you do not want her to succeed at all. And I love the musical sequence that the fairy godmother has in the big conclusion to this film. Honestly, that musical sequence with the fairy godmother singing "Holding Out for a Hero" towards the end of the film is one of my favourite musical sequences in any movie, period. I love it. It's enormously enjoyable because you've got her singing, you've got Jennifer Saunders singing like an angel. Jennifer Saunders is a brilliant singer, and I didn't really realise that until I watched this film a couple of years ago during the pandemic, and I was like, oh my god, Jennifer Saunders is actually singing as the fairy godmother during the whole holding out for a hero sequence towards the end of the film. And not only is that brilliant, not only is that whole fairy godmother element with her singing and Prince Charming and Fiona, you know, dancing to her singing as well. Not only is that brilliant, but then at the same time you've got Shrek donkey, but he's not donkey, he's a horse, and you have Shrek in his human form, and Puss in Boots, and the big gingerbread man, and the gingerbread man, and all these fairy tale characters, like Pinocchio, the big bad wolf, the three little pigs, the three blind mice. You've got all them helping Shrek to get to Fiona and, kiss her before midnight, kiss her before Prince Charming does. And I love the way that whole sequence is edited. It's so enormously entertaining to watch, and that's another reason this film works so flipping well, because it's so enormously enjoyable to watch. Still, it's so enormously enjoyable to watch. The soundtrack is still great. I mean, I spoke about the use of Holding Out for a Hero just then, but also you've got so many great songs in this film, and I really love the song Accidentally in Love, which plays when you see Shrek and Fiona on their honeymoon at the start of the movie. I love that song. I love the musical score by Harry Gregson Williams, because here's the great thing about the musical score. Whenever I hear it, it reminds me of Shrek, which, when I said it then, didn't sound like a compliment, but I mean it as a compliment. It reminds me of the John Powell scores to the How to Train Your Dragon movies. Whenever I listen to the music to the How to Train Your Dragon films, I am brought back to the world of the How to Train Your Dragon movies. It's got a name now. The place where the How to Train Your Dragon movies is set as a world, but as a name, but I forgot what the name is at the top of my head right now. But you get the point I'm making. And whenever I listen to the score for any of the Shrek movies, not just the first two Shrek movies, but for any of the Shrek movies, I am brought back to the world of Shrek, to Far, Far Away, to the swamp. Da 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 da. It sounds like a great fairy tale piece of music, and if you didn't know that it was a music to a film all about an ogre finding love and an ogre trying to reach their happily ever after, you'd think it's a musical score to like a Disney fairy tale movie, and I love that. I love the musical score. I think it's perfect, and I love the world building in this movie. I love the addition of Far, Far Away, the kingdom of Far, Far Away, because usually in fairy tale stories you get the phrase far, far away it's a sort of like a get out of jail free card, for lack of a better phrase, as a way of like saying, oh yeah, this is a kingdom far, far away. We're not actually going to say how far it is, but far, far away is just meant to mean in fairy tale stories a long, long way away. Whilst in this story, is the actual place. In this film, the kingdom of Far, Far Away is an actual place. And when they go to Far, Far Away, and the words Far, Far Away are like on the land in the sort of Hollywood sign type way. If you've seen the film, you know what I mean. I don't know how much I'm explaining myself well today, because I am not on 100% right now. I didn't have the best sleep last night, and I'm not feeling 100%, so I don't know how well I'm explaining myself in this review, but I love the addition of Far, Far Away. I love the world building, and like I briefly alluded to earlier on this review, but which I'm going to explore again more here, I love how the themes from the first film are carried over into this movie and explored in a more interesting fashion. I love how this film explores, that your happily ever after may not look like you think it's going to look like, and that even the ugliest looking creatures, the ugliest looking people, are not necessarily ugly on the inside, and they deserve happiness as well. And I also love how it's a sequel to the first film, because so many times with these fairy tale stories, you don't get great sequels. You don't really get many sequels for these fairy tale stories, and if you do get sequels, they're usually like a straight to video sequel. Like, how many times do you hear people talking about Aladdin 2? The answer is not that many times. How many times do you hear somebody talking about, I don't know, Cinderella 2? The answer is not that many times. I'm not even sure there's a Cinderella 2, but you get the point I'm making. Usually when you get a fairy tale story, it ends with a happily ever after. And the first film ended with a happily ever after. Shrek and Fiona got together and they're both ogres in love. But with Shrek 2, it kind of turns that idea on its head. It's like, oh yeah, they have the happily ever after, but what about the happily ever after is short-lived? What happens when Shrek gets to meet his in-laws and they don't approve of him, and actually the in-laws want Fiona to be with somebody else. What happens when you're happily ever after? What happens after you're happily ever after? And that's what I love about this movie. It questions all those other fairy tales where you see the man and you see the Prince Charming-like figure and the princess going off into the distance and they're on the happily ever after. Whilst this movie, you saw that happen in the last film, but in this film it's like, what happens after though? After they fell in love and after they have their quote-unquote happily ever after, is it actually their happily ever after? And what happens next? Did they still make it to the happily ever after? Or is there something else? Is it not necessarily smooth sailing for the rest of their lives? And that's what I love about this film. It's a great fairy tale sequel, and you don't get a lot of them. You don't get that many of them, full stop. And yes, it's got the same message and themes of the first film, but it's also a different story. You know, and that sounds like it's an easy thing to do, but it's not an easy thing to do. There's so many times you get sequels and it's just the same story or round about the same story as the first film. And I actually think it's more difficult to make a great sequel than it is to make a great original first film. You know what I mean? Because with a sequel, you've got to up the game, essentially. You've got to make everything bigger and you're going to try and make everything better. And there's so many times when a sequel falls short to the original. Whilst in this film, they do big up everything. They make everything bigger, and you know what? They make everything better. They do a completely different story while still adhering to the same themes of the first film to do with happily ever after and, you know, don't judge a book by its cover and everything like that, and still providing a very satisfying watch. I love how it carries over the themes from the first film and does so in a way where the storytelling is more confident, the characters you really begin to like a lot more. I mean, not that you don't like the likes of Shrek, Fiona and Donkey in this first film, but in this film you see them in a new light. I mean, quite literally, because at one point in the film you see Shrek in a human form and you see Donkey as a horse, and whenever that happens in the film, whenever I'm rewatching the film and that happens, it always makes me laugh. I don't know why, but I love seeing Shrek turn into his human form and seeing Donkey turn into a horse. I love that. So yeah, you get to see the characters in a new light. You get new characters which are just so watchable and instantly lovable at the same time, and you get a story which you get invested in, which you really care about, and you get these fantastically entertaining sequences like the holding out for hero sequence, which, like I've already said, is one of my favourite musical sequences in any movie period, and the animation is better than this. The whole film is just, I mean, it's wildly enjoyable to watch. I don't know if I'd say it's one of the best sequels of all time. I think when I said that in the past, it has maybe been me over-exaggerating. So yeah, I don't know if it's one of the best sequels of all time. Maybe I was exaggerating a little bit when I was saying that. Maybe, you know, maybe if I give this film more thought, I'd be like, actually, you know, I do consider it one of the best sequels of all time. But after watching it a couple of days ago now, I'm like, yeah, maybe I was over-exaggerating just a little bit when I called it one of the best sequels of all time in videos prior to this one, in reviews prior to this one that I've done. But I do think it is a superior film to the first Shrek. And I think that, I think it's just brilliant. I think it's a perfect film for what it is. It is not without its flaws, for sure. But for what it is, I think it's a perfect movie. Yeah, and that is why I absolutely love Shrek 2. And that is why I'm going to give it, you know what, I'm feeling generous today. I don't know why, because I didn't have a great sleep last night. And I'm not feeling on top form, but I'm feeling generous today. So that is why I'm going to give this film a 10 out of 10. Yeah, there's not a single thing I would change about it. I love it. Love it. There's not a bad thing I would say about this film. There are little flaws, and you know, if you pause the film and you could probably pick holes in it if you went through it, scene by scene by scene. But honestly, I get bored of people doing that with movies. I don't know why people do that with films. Films are meant to be entertaining. Films are meant to be entertaining, and they're meant to, move you. They're meant to make you feel stuff emotionally. They're meant to make you smile in the case of this movie. And if a film like this is doing that, then I think it's doing its job very well. This film is moving. This film is wildly entertaining to watch, and it is so funny still. That's one thing I haven't really touched on, but I find this film still, like the first film, hilariously funny. I do think the first Shrek is slightly funnier than this movie, but I still find Shrek 2 to be a very funny film. And yeah, there's so many things that I love about this film. There's so many things I love about it. I think it's a genius film. And yeah, it is definitely in my top 10 favourite animated movies of all time. I don't know if I'd say it's in my top 5, but it is definitely in my top 10. It's so good. And you get the point I'm making in this review. I love Shrek 2. And so, all in all, as I've already said, and as I'm going to say once more in this podcast today, Shrek 2 is a 10 out of 10 for me. Anyway, guys, that's it for today's podcast. If you have seen Shrek 2, then please let me know your thoughts on it in the comment section below. And look forward to my review of Shrek the Third coming very, very soon on this channel. And you may be surprised as to what I'm going to say about Shrek the Third. You may be surprised on my thoughts and feelings on that film. So yeah, look forward to my review of Shrek the Third coming very, very soon on this channel. But until then, guys, thank you so much for watching or listening to this podcast. And if you haven't yet, please do click down below and like and subscribe on this video. And look forward to many more videos and many more podcasts coming very, very soon on this channel. As I've already said, thank you so much for watching or listening to this podcast. And I will see you guys again soon. But bye for now. Bye.